Howdy again, everybody. This is Doc with ThoroFan, and I am up in beautiful Saratoga Springs, New York at Saratoga Racetrack, and I am currently on the grounds of the Oklahoma training track, which is on kind of the other side of the street from the main racing facility itself. It is someplace that is open to the public for training hours every day during the Saratoga meet. You can see behind me right there is the Whitney viewing stand. Definitely come and check it out. It's a great place to view the horses going through their morning workouts, and it is the place where you, of course, can get your hands on the ThoroFan 2020 Towel Guide, and it's filled with a ton of information. It really kind of gives you a little bit of information about the horses going through their morning workouts, what is done with exercising horses, and most importantly, gives a picture of all the different types of saddle pads that the trainers use. So you can determine by looking at the saddle pad what horse is trained by what trainer. So it is a wealth of information. It's perfectly free. Come on up to the Whitney stand and get your copy before they are gone, because there is only a limited supply here. So it really kind of makes Saratoga definitely the summer place to be if you're involved in racing. But there is one person who we are left kind of wondering if Saratoga will be the summer place to be for him, and that, of course, is Bob Baffert. And a lot has happened, since that first Saturday in May and Medina Spirit winning the Kentucky Derby. There's been a lot of questions that have been circulating as to exactly where do things stand, what's with all these lawsuits, what's going on, is the horse disqualified, is he not, where does all of that stand? And so, I kind of figured that the best way to explain everything and answer some of those questions was to kind of put together a little bit of a timeline of things that have happened so far in this whole saga from the time the Kentucky Derby was run the first Saturday of May. So sit back, enjoy as we try to answer as many questions as we can in the Baffert-Gate saga. It all began on a glorious afternoon on the first Saturday in May, as fans were back in the stands and the Derby was back to where it was supposed to be on the calendar, with history being made on the track for a certain white-haired trainer.
Charging down the center of the track, racing for the mid-stretch marker. Mandaloon strikes the front with a furlong to go, but Medina Spirit is fighting on. Hot Rod Charlie is there. Essential Quality. Bezos is back in fifth. There's just 100 yards left in the Derby. Medina Spirit's trying to hold. Mandaloon is right there, but Medina Spirit did it! Medina Spirit for Bob Baffert, another winner for him!
Then, on May 9th, a stunning announcement from the Bob Baffert barn at Churchill after rumors started circulating.
Okay, yesterday I got a call from Jimmy Barnes. I was headed to the airport, and I got some horrible news. He said he had some horrible news for me, that he's just been served by the Kentucky Race Commission that Medina Spirit, our Derby horse, had been tested positive for 21 picograms of betamethasone. And all I can tell you is that betamethasone, even though it's an allowed drug, therapeutic medication, we did not give it. My veterinarian, nobody here, that matter of fact, Medina Spirit has never been treated with betamethasone.
Baffert immediately did request a split sample, basically a second test for the drug from the original sample of blood and urine taken from Medina Spirit after his Derby win, be sent to another lab to confirm the findings. And he could have actually remained quiet on this positive, as stewards and the Kentucky Horse Racing Commission would not have announced a positive until a split sample came back. But it appeared Baffert wanted to try to get ahead of the whole thing by announcing it, and as you heard, stating it could not possibly be true because the horse had never been treated with betamethasone. Churchill Downs also took the step of immediately suspending Baffert from entering any horses until an investigation was completed. So, Medina Spirit was never treated with betamethasone in his life. Or, well, was he? 2 days later, Baffert puts out a press release saying that from the time the horse ran in the Santa Anita Derby to just a day before the Kentucky Derby, he was being treated for a minor fungal skin infection with a topical medication called Otamax, which has betamethasone as one of the ingredients. This, of course, led to immediate questions of how the trainer could not know that his one Derby horse was being treated with a medication that had a prohibited drug in it. Some were wondering how his vet could have allowed the treatment as well. Meanwhile, the Maryland Jockey Club, after looking at all the evidence that was available so far, and with the Kentucky Horse Racing Commission saying no ruling on the matter would happen before the running of the Preakness, enters into an agreement with Baffert to have all horses he was planning on running Preakness weekend, including Medina Spirit, subject to multiple rounds of pre-rest testing. If all of those tests came back clean, then he would be allowed to run his horses. Baffert also reports he will not make the trip to Pimlico as he does not want to serve as a distraction at the event. One day before the Preakness, it was reported that 4 horse players who felt they were cheated out of rightful winnings as they had money placed on Derby's second-place finisher Mandaloun, filed a civil suit against both Baffert and Medina Spirit's owners Amir Zidan, alleging that they were cheated out of winnings by the pair. Further lawsuits would follow, and some even tried to apply the RICO statute to them, something that is usually only reserved for organized crime prosecutions. None of those lawsuits have been heard or decided on as of yet. On Preakness Day, it was announced that Medina Spirit had passed all 3 stages of pre-race testing and would be allowed to run. The media did not shy away from the issue in the telecast, asking many questions that a lot of folks in racing have been asking for some time, most notably how Baffert had stated the year before he was going to tighten his ship after so many post-race positives and take steps to prevent these sorts of things from happening going forward. Despite saying he did not want to be a distraction for the event, Baffert then sends out a press release responding to some of the critics and ending it with what some would say is a quite ironic statement of, the event should be about the horses and not about him. Oh, and as for the Preakness itself?
And so with 2.5 furlongs left to go, Midnight Bourbon on the outside to Medina Spirit. Midnight Bourbon, Medina Spirit is fighting back on the inside. They're shoulder to shoulder. And on the outside, Rumbauer's ready to roll too. 3 chances, furlong and a half left to go. And here comes Rumbauer on the outside. Rumbauer's gone by Midnight Bourbon. Medina Spirit's back in third and fading. A 16th of a mile left to go. Rumbauer and Flavian Pratt, they're rolling home. Rumbauer to win by 3. Midnight Bourbon was second. Medina Spirit was followed by Keep Me in Mind, and then it was...
On June 2nd, the results everyone had been waiting for, and pretty much expected, were revealed when the split sample on Medina Spirit came back positive for betamethasone. Upon the news, Churchill Downs Incorporated instituted a 2-year ban on Baffert entering horses at any of its tracks, effectively knocking the, for now, winningest trainer in Kentucky Derby history, out of being able to pad that lead in the next 2 runnings. This added to the tracks Baffert was not welcome at, after an indefinite suspension on the trainer was placed by the New York Racing Association the day after the Preakness, an action that NYRA CEO David O'Rourke said was taken in the best interest of thoroughbred racing. More testing drama ensued on June 8th as Baffert and Zidan filed a suit against the KHRC over obtaining more of the split sample to do their own testing on, arguing that they need this extra testing to prove their claim the betamethasone came from the Otamax and thus would be a mitigating circumstance and should not be the cause for the horse's disqualification or the trainer's suspension. It came down to how much of the urine would be allowed to be used for testing and how it would be transported to the lab for that testing. The judge held off on ruling that day in hopes that the 2 sides could work it out, but said if not, he would rule on the matter shortly. We head back to New York next on June 14th when Baffert filed a lawsuit against NYRA, arguing that his due process rights were violated when they placed an indefinite suspension on him without a hearing. They also argued that NYRA was not truly an independent agency since it was regulated so much by, and at one point controlled by, the state of New York. On June 16th, the judge ruled that more testing can be done by the Baffert team and details for how the samples are to be shipped were worked out as well. I think they just asked the military to do it, creating their own sample football, if you will. The effects of the suspensions from NYRA and Churchill Downs were starting to show on the Baffert barn, as some owners, most notably Windstar Farm and Spendthrift Farm, began removing their horses from Baffert's care and placing them with other trainers. The reason given was that these owners had races in mind they wanted to point their horses for in New York and Kentucky, and with Baffert banned from both tracks, they had no choice but to move their horses. The last day of June saw NYRA responding to the Baffert lawsuit with their own brief, basically stating that they felt they had the legal right to ban him based on the fact they are an independent organization, and that it was being done to ensure the integrity of the sport. In a little bit of a surprise move, the Jockey Club asked, and was granted approval, to submit a brief in the case as well, outlining why it felt the ban of Baffert from NYRA was needed for the health and integrity of the industry going forward. The back and forth continued as Baffert's legal team then filed a response of their own on July 7th, a 44-page memorandum outlining their responses to both the claims of the Jockey Club and NYRA. At the heart of the matter for them remained the fact that Baffert was not given a chance to defend himself at a hearing, thus violating his rights. The memorandum also pointed to the fact that many owners had or were considering removing horses from Baffert to be able to run them at Saratoga. This would represent a hardship to Baffert that he would not be able to recoup since Saratoga is such a short racing season. 5 days after Baffert's team filed their brief, a judge heard the case in Brooklyn. Both sides basically reiterated their arguments that had been laid out in briefs, and the judge delayed ruling on the case that day, saying she would take time to read final briefs submitted and then make a ruling. Those who paid attention to the questions she asked both sides, though, seemed to feel she was leaning towards agreeing with the Baffert team. 2 days later, those feelings proved to be correct, as the judge found in favor of Baffert's request for an injunction to be placed on the suspension, thus allowing him to stable and enter horses on NYRA grounds immediately if he chose to do so. Agreeing with the Baffert's team argument that he was not granted proper due process, some saw it as only a temporary victory for Baffert in that NYRA would soon hold a hearing on the matter and then reissue the suspension. Well, that brings us, of course, to today, and there's a lot of questions that still remain unanswered, and some of them we don't know when we'll get the exact answers to. Obviously, one of the biggest ones that a lot of people are wondering is why hasn't Medina Spirit been officially disqualified yet from his win in the Kentucky Derby? As we said, the split sample had to come back, so we had to wait for that. We got the split sample back almost over a month ago now, and there still hasn't been any kind of official ruling on it, so we really don't know what the stewards are waiting for. Perhaps they're having trouble coordinating a hearing, making sure that everything is on the same page legally. I'm really not sure. Nobody is really sure what the exact holdup is, but I'm sure it's, for legal reasons or whatever. So at some point, we are assuming, hopefully in the near future, that official disqualification will come through. So we all know, though, that as soon as that disqualification happens, the appeal is going to be made by the Baffert team up to the Kentucky Horse Racing Commission and potentially higher and higher, depending on what the Kentucky Horse Racing Commission rules. So this is probably going to be an issue that is not going to be resolved anytime soon. Who knows? We could be looking at this sort of issue going on for years, depending on how long they want to, go with the appeals process and all of that. Another question that's being asked is what exact defense is the Baffert team going to put on in all of this? Because they've really mentioned so many different things, we really don't know what their defense strategy is going to be. We also don't know what the results of these tests that they have really fought hard for to be done by their own lab have revealed, and I'm assuming that that's probably not going to be revealed until there is an actual hearing or trial on the matter, when of course it will have to be made known. It sounds like they are still going to argue this point of that the amount that was found in the horse's system did not have any effect on the performance of the horse in the race, and that they're going to look at different formulations of betamethasone from the ointment versus an actual injection, and then try to do a lot of legal arguments with the way that the rules and the regulations are written. It's what lawyers do. They look for these types of loopholes and things like that. So we'll just have to see exactly how far that argument goes and who potentially agrees or disagrees with it. The overwhelming majority seem to think that none of this really should matter, because the rule basically states there can be no betamethasone found in the horse's system, on race day in a post-race test, no matter what the source of that betamethasone was. So it'll be very interesting to see where that all goes. And kind of finally, what is going to happen but with these suspensions, non-suspensions that have been handed out, by NYRA and by Churchill Downs Incorporated. Obviously, he did win an injunction, for at least a temporary injunction, against the suspension that NYRA has put on him. But the question is, will that be temporary, and will they go ahead and figure out a way to, just hold a hearing and then basically give him his due process and then go ahead and suspend him potentially indefinitely again? We're really not sure. Will they try to use the same argument on the Churchill Downs suspension to allow them to go ahead and get an injunction on that one. So all of these questions are up in the air. We really don't know what's going to happen, but what we do know is that right here at ThoroFan, we're going to be watching all this very closely and bringing you updates as need be. This is being filmed and kind of put together on July 20th, 21st. So who knows what could happen from the time we actually put it together to when it's usually published on a Friday a couple of days from now. There could be changes. And of course, if there are, we will bring them to you right here at ThoroFan, because as we have always said, for the most accurate, up-to-date, and pertinent information about racing for the racing fan, by the racing fans, there is one place that you want to visit, and that is right here at ThoroFan. I am Doc for ThoroFan, and we will see you next time as we continue to follow the Baffert-Gate saga.